Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Maybe not the most scintillating, like sexy topic of the conference, yet important. So, some of you perhaps already heard this, so I'm sorry if there's little bits of overlap, but I want to tell you just a little bit about my background so you can understand where I come from and how I, over the years, have come up with my sort of thoughts and philosophies about building a team. Um, Everything about owning and running a business, I pretty much learned along the way, the hard way. I did have a really important business operations mentor who he actually was my boss at one point years ago and helped me sort of hone and learn a lot of management and operational tools that I'm going to talk about today. And should I wave for the camera so it finds me? Hello. And it didn't find me yet. Okay. No. Oh, there it goes. Okay, got me. Okay. The robot is following me, which is interesting. I also am an attorney and I've practiced law for the last 25 years. I've done a little bit of employment law in my background advising small businesses. So you'll hear in my talk some little, pieces of that as well. So the first thing I want to touch on is why is it even important to build a team and to manage a team? And I think a lot of us in agriculture in this industry tend to veer on the side of being workaholics and kind of like, ingrained in the concepts of like, oh, the more you work, the better. And, you're lazy if you take time off or if you take vacations or anything like that. And we firmly believe that the more people surrounding us that know things that we don't know or challenge us on our thinking or can give us ideas, the better. And we can't do it all on our own. There's just no way. There's too much. There's too many things on the list. There's too many opportunities. And this is a very ranching for profit principle or way of saying it. But if we spend all of our time working in the business in like the $20 an hour jobs, then we have no time, no energy, no creativity to focus on working on the business, which is most often more important. And it's how you really get somewhere and it's how you really create change. We, in the very early days, realized by learning from others around us that to be true business owners, we didn't want to do all of the jobs. We wanted to have people around us that could do the jobs so that we could work in the areas of the business where we truly feel like we add the most value. And let's be honest, we're not good at all of the different parts of it. But also so that we could take time off and so that we weren't working 7 days a week and we weren't working late every night and we could take vacations and watch our kids play sports and do social activities. I see in the agricultural community a lot of burnout. I think physical and emotional burnout, and that's real. And the reality is that when you're exhausted and you're burnt out, you are not doing your best work. You're not thinking your sharpest ideas. You don't have the brain space for creativity. And that's really when the magic happens. And by the way, if you guys want to jump in with questions or comments while I'm talking, I'm totally fine with that. One thing I want to touch on is that this part of running a business is so hard. There is nothing easy about it. People, as we all know, can be super tricky. Dealing with people that have different personalities than your own is so hard. Dealing with people that have your same personality is just as hard. It's really not easy. And what I see over and over is that if you are trying to run a business or be part of a business and you don't put as much energy and thought and planning into the people as you do to the actual enterprise, it is not going to go well. So some initial tips that I have is to look around you in your community, either your physical community or your virtual community, and find a mentor. Find someone that has done it more than you, or that you admire, or that you see that they seem to be having success with it, and ask them. People love to be helpful. Say, can I take you to coffee? Can we go for a walk? Can I sit down and pick your brain a little bit about this topic? There's so many educational tools available out there on all of the business principles, but also management principles of dealing with people, of hiring, of managing. This is really just the tip of the iceberg, but these are just a few books that have really been pivotal for me, not just in managing people, but in more of the operations side of a business. The E-Myth, you guys have probably heard or maybe read of these books already, but the E-Myth talks a lot about systems, and people are a huge part of systems. And one of the hardest parts of delegating and bringing people on is that, there's like a fear factor, like, oh, if someone else does it, they're not going to do it right, or they're not going to do it the way I want. But if you create a system and then you document the system and you really communicate it, then someone else can do it, and maybe even better than you. Good to Great is a book that talks about many things, but one of me and Lauren's favorites is getting the right person in the right seat of the bus. And sometimes you have the right person, but they're not in the right role. And honestly, that's just as bad as if they're not the right person, because they're going to be frustrated also. And then Dare to Lead by Brene Brown just has a lot of overall really great leadership and communication principles. There's so many virtual resources and communities. Obviously, this very conference that we're at and your various smaller organizations is a huge resource for finding the right people, finding the right materials. There's a bunch of subreddit groups that I go to all the time on leadership, mentorship, management, employment, all of those things. Facebook groups, local and worldwide, on topics like this. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to mention it one more time ad nauseum, but Lauren and I are disciples of the Ranching for Profit School. We went 13 years ago. It was a huge investment for us at the time. Lauren still had a full-time job. I had my law practice. We had our ranch business. We had 2 little babies at home. The concept of not only paying for the school, but getting childcare for our 2 kids for 7 days, and the plane tickets and the hotel, and each of us taking a whole week off of work was like nauseating. I think it took us a whole year before we finally pulled the trigger to do it. And it was like one of the best decisions we ever made, not just because of the content that we learned at the school, but because of the people we met, and because it just opened our minds to the concept of changing our own paradigms, challenging ourselves, and really creating processes and systems for our business. We've also sent several of our employees to the school. So one thing is, you've got to be easy on yourself. You're absolutely going to make mistakes. We can sit around and I can tell you all about the people that I've hired that were total bad hires and did not work and created a lot of headaches and heartaches for myself and our team. But it's just the way it goes. It's like, if you're grazing and you're dealing with your livestock, you're going to make mistakes with that too. It's just, you just got to roll with the punches and keep on going. One of the principles that I try really hard to think about is that when you're hiring, you want to hire slow, which means if you're forming these relationships, you really want to be thoughtful, not only about why are you hiring. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Who are you hiring? What are they going to do? How are they going to be trained? What is that going to look like? And if you have someone on your team, either because you've just hired them or maybe you've been working with them for a long time, and they are not the right fit, So many of us, I think it's like non-confrontational nature that a lot of people have. It's really hard to have that conversation of, you know what, this is not the right fit. It is time for you to move on. I think in many situations, people keep employees much longer than perhaps they should have. And sometimes you just got to rip off the Band-Aid and move on. And I am going to talk a little bit more about that today. A few overarching philosophies that I have in managing people and in building a team is that good is better than perfect. I think a lot of times people get frozen where it's not a 10 out of 10, or you're not ready, or you're not this, or you're not that. And a lot of times, honestly, I think one of the reasons why we've been able to do so many things is because we're not shooting for perfection. We're just shooting for it to be good and for it to align with the principles of our business. One thing that I like to say with many people is to draft for the team. We many times have in our network and in our lives come across someone who we felt was just a phenomenal person and that they would make an amazing addition to our team. We didn't necessarily have a job or the job, but it just felt like the right person. And one example of that is Maddie, who's at this conference with us today, and she's going to do the talk this afternoon with Lauren on multi-species grazing. But she graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, the same university that me and Lauren went to. She grew up in our same town. She studied sustainable agriculture. And when she graduated from college, she sent us an email and was like, hey, my name is Maddie, and just told us a little bit about herself. And she was like, I know your business. I would love to work with you. Do you have any opportunities for me? And we get phone calls and emails like that, a lot. And but there was something about the way she presented herself that really hit me. And I said, you know what? I don't really have a job right now, but I would love to meet with you. Please come to the office. Let's meet. So this was like 8 years ago, by the way. So she comes to the office. She looked like she was 12. She still looks so young. And she was very shy, but she sat down and we talked for maybe a half an hour. And I was just completely blown away by her as a human being. And I just felt something in my heart about Maddie. I have the chills right now as I'm describing this. And I just said to her, you know what, Maddie? I do not have a job right now. I don't have a job opening. But if you can be patient with me, I will hire you part-time. You can start working at the farmers markets. And if you can be patient, then we will slowly incorporate you into our business because I believe in you. And she just had the drive and the desire and the thoughtfulness that I just felt in my bones that she was going to be amazing. And she said yes. I mean, I was very lucky. And it's now 8 years later. She is truly as phenomenal as I thought she might be. She's family now to us, and she has worked in every single area of our business. And she has truly been able to grow as a professional, and she has helped us grow. She just brings so much. When Lauren had his stroke 3 weeks ago, and I was completely having a panic attack about what we were going to do about this conference, I just said, oh, we can bring Maddie and she can help support us and she can help Lauren in his presentations. And it's, unbelievable to have someone like that. Sometimes you have a role that drafting for the team isn't going to work because you don't just need an amazing person, but you need someone who really has a very specific skill. Okay, I'm going to give you some examples. If I needed someone to do social media ads for marketing, I would not be drafting for the team in a situation like that. I would be oh, we need an expert who has done this 100 times, hopefully in food, food and consumer-facing products, because that is just such a specialized thing that you don't want to try and teach someone. I couldn't teach them because I don't know how to do it myself, but you really are looking for a narrow, very specific focus. Does that make sense? One of my philosophies in life, not just in business, is honesty. And that might seem, oh, duh, okay, take that one for granted. But the reality is that sometimes honesty is really hard. And it's hard to say things that people don't like to hear. But same in my parenting with my children, I am always, always, every single day honest, but I'm also diplomatic and I'm also kind. Okay, maybe not when I'm having a bad day, but I try to be, and I try to be very direct. And if I feel like I'm going to be giving a message that might be hard for the person to hear, I will just say, listen, this is a really hard conversation to me to have. I really value that you do X, Y, and Z, and I'm really thankful that you're really this, but we are struggling in an area and this is what it is. And I really want to help you. You know, I think that if you can be open and honest and kind and diplomatic, that you will not shy away from the difficult conversations. And I find that shying away from difficult conversations every single time backfires because the problem only gets worse and then it goes on for longer and then the conversation is even harder to have. Have you ever experienced that before? Yeah, okay. One tool, and it's really not a tool, it's really just who I am as a human being, but it is a tool that I use, is vulnerability. When I'm managing people, I am very honest and raw and open and vulnerable. And I tell them and I show them what I'm struggling with or what I've tried to learn and I can't seem to figure it out. Or, you know, the areas of my business management that I'm not good at. I never want anyone on our team to think that me and Lauren think that like, oh, we're perfect or oh, we're untouchable, because that's not helpful. I mean, that's not true connection of the people that are on your team. Also, this morning in the keynote, I talked about the one pager that we use for strategy and for, you know, really determining our path. That is a tool that I use when we're going to hire someone, because we have to know what is our focus for this year, what is our focus for the next 5 years, what are our values, to even know, why am I hiring them, why are we filling this role, what type of a person do we want on our team. And then lastly, we want everyone on our team to know deep in their heart that they are valued and that they are loved and that they are so important to our organization. And this is not puffery, like this is real, real feelings. And, you know, we are not Salesforce, we are not Apple. We cannot always pay people the highest salaries that they might be able to garner, but we absolutely very deeply think and plan and discuss how we can make sure that the people on our team feel that they are very excited about who we are, what we represent, and that they are part of our team. And I have to say, when we brought on Connor, our general manager, about 2 years ago, he said that one of the things he was most inspired by was that we have people coming out of the woodworks that want to work for us. So when we have a job opening, it honestly is not very hard for us to find the right person. Again, I'm feeling superstitious, like I should knock on wood right now, but there's no wood up here, so someone can do it for me. But it's like, I'm very deeply proud. Like the last day of my life, I will be proud that Lauren and I have built an organization that people want to be a part of, because not only of the work that we do, but because of the way our team members feel and are truly part of the mission and the values that we represent. And now Maddie's here, so she's gonna fact check me on anything that might arise. So as I mentioned, you know, we can't always be, you know, provide the highest salary for every person that works for us. They could maybe go work at a different company or in a different industry and make more money. But that doesn't mean that we don't work very hard to give them an entire package that they are truly happy with and proud of. We offer full benefits. We have a 401k program. Anyone, even someone who works 1 day a week for us at the farmers market, they get a certain value of product every week that if they want, they could take it home and grill it, or they can go and trade at the farmers market and end up with a whole entire week's worth of food. Our guys that work on the ranch, they get their own cattle. They are truly like part of the system. We have 2 guys that have worked on the ranch with Lauren, and they have been with us pushing on 20 years. And that's amazing. And one of the reasons why we are able to be luxuries to the business and to travel and to spend time with our family is because we know that they're there and that they have our backs and that they are going to make decisions in our best interest. I think that every person is striving for honest, diplomatic feedback. And this is something that I think managers are sometimes really scared to do because people shy away from what can be difficult conversations. But I believe in feedback early and often. So not just in like an annual performance review, but all the time, like every week. Like, oh, you're doing so great. I loved it when I saw you do that. Wow, this email that you wrote, that was phenomenal. Or, hey, you know what? When you're doing that and you see something that needs some help or some training, it doesn't hurt as bad when you're like, oh gosh, I saw this email that you wrote this customer, and I feel like we maybe would have like had a little bit of a different tone. And it's received so much more openly because feedback is part of the culture and it's not like a one-off. Does that make sense? So the next item is that I am a very, 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 very firm believer in leading by example, both with my children and our team. I do not ever want to engage in behavior that I would not be proud for my employees to do as well. And that's hard. I mean, it's a hard part of life, but it is what it is. Actually, before I move on, I wanted to tell a quick little story of something that I did for our team that 5 years later they still talk about. And it was a little crazy. So this is not something that I would expect, a lot of people to replicate, but I think it shows an example of my philosophies on this. And that is at the height of COVID, and I guess it was what was that, 2020? We couldn't have our company holiday party that year, of course, in person. And I really was racking my brain for something that we could do that would be really special for our team. And I had a chef that we work with make a beautiful, very sort of elaborate boxed dinners. And I picked them up at his catering location, and I put them all in my car. And I spent 4 hours driving around the Bay Area, personally dropping them off to each of our employees' homes. I'm gonna like cry. And they were so floored. I mean, like I showed up at the door and they were just like, oh my gosh, Lisa, I cannot believe you are dropping off this dinner to me. And everyone got a meal for them and their partner and a bottle of wine. And then that night we did like a Zoom, I don't know, like some activity where we all ate the dinner together on Zoom. And like, did it cost me a ton of money to get the dinner and to drive around and deliver them? No, but it really demonstrated to our team how much we care about them and how much we value what they do for our company and to our family. So I have done quite a bit of reading about what makes a successful team and what makes people have that feeling in their heart that they want to do everything in their power to do the best for the work that they do. Of course, it doesn't hurt having a values and a mission-driven company because people really want to feel a part of that. And the people that want to be a part of that are the type of people that we want. So it's very symbiotic. But Google did a study that showed that people that are most safe, that they feel psychologically safe on their team, and they have dependability and they feel structure and they feel valued, those are the people that are happiest in the work that they're doing. And when they're happiest in the work that they're doing, it's win-win because it means they are going to be that much more dedicated to the work that they're doing. So if you feel that you're at a spot where you're thinking about hiring someone, of course, the question is, what do you need help with? Is it administrative help? You know, it's most likely not going to be a mini-me. You most likely don't need someone that has the same skills that you do, because if you're good at certain things, okay, go for it. Do good at what you do good. A lot of people, what they really need is they really need someone who's good at the things that they're not good at. We already talked about drafting for the team or finding a specialist. And the other thing I want to mention is that it's perfectly acceptable to start small. The first employee that we hired on the meat side of our business, we hired someone part-time to basically be a farmer's market manager. And I did something very similar with him that I did with Maddie. You know, we said, okay, you can start part-time. We're pretty sure that eventually we can get you into a full-time position, but you're going to need to be patient and, you know, grow with us. And he ended up staying with us for, I don't know, 10 years, a long time. And he grew in his role as the company grew. This is my shameless plug that you really don't want to put your head in the sand about the legal and the HR things behind hiring people. It's just, there's so many minefields. It is risky. I don't know anything about how the laws work in all of your various New England states, but this is not, in my opinion, this is not where you want to scrimp and save. You really want to lean in and get some solid advice about what you're doing with your employees in terms of your state laws, safety protocols. Let's face it, this is like an unsafe industry. I mean, I think our workers' comp rates on the ranch are some of like the highest bands that workers' comp insurance has. Wage and hour laws. One thing that is very hard in, I mean, really in any industry, but definitely in agriculture and this type of thing, is that the IRS has very strict rules about who's an employee and should be paid on payroll and get a W-2 at the end of the year versus who's an independent contractor, where you could just like pay them, you know, write a check or pay them cash and send them a 1099 at the end of the year. It's really not about what you think they are. It's really about what the IRS thinks they are. And it can be a very costly mistake if you don't choose wisely. Of course, hiring and firing, you know, there's a lot that can go into it. And then one philosophy that we have in all aspects of our business is that if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. And this is a good business principle, not just for your employees, but also for your customers. If you have an employee, you should have a written job description. And I'm going to go over that a little bit more in a minute so that it is very clear on both sides of the equation of what the job even is and what they're trying to do. If they're struggling in an area and you talk about it with them and you're giving them coaching or help or tools or resources, or you want something, you know, I need you to be here at 8 a.m., not at 8:30, or, you know, whatever it is, you need to follow it up in writing. It can be casual. It could be a quick email. You know, it could be like, hey, I just want to make sure we're on the same page about the conversation that we had today. Because what that does, you know, memory is elusive. Not only your own, but also the employees. If they're still struggling with that issue a month later, it's so much more meaningful to pull up the email and be like, look, we talked about this a month ago, and now I'm really struggling because we still seem to be having the same issue. Okay, so job descriptions are like the most boring thing in the world, and no one wants to be excited about it. And I think in a lot of instances, it's like it's a roadblock. It's like, oh, if I really have to sit down and write a job description, like, oh God, you're just going to put off doing that and never do it. First of all, remember what I said. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good. It just has to be there. This is something that like AI in the land of 2020 that we're living in right now. AI is an amazing tool. I use Claude. Claude is my friend from Anthropic. I've used Claude to write job descriptions. I go in, I say, this is my business. This is what we do. This is the role I'm looking to fill. These are the things that are important to me. Can you write me a one-page job description? And it does 80% of the work. But the reason why I will live and die on the fact that a job description is so crucial is because to me, it is the foundation of a good relationship with an employee. If it is not in writing specifically of what you're looking for, how does the perfect employee even know they want the job? Or if you have a candidate who's an amazing candidate, how do you even know what you're looking for the position? How would you even know? If they start and if they're struggling with some aspect of the job, it is so much easier to pull out the job description and be like, oh, remember this, bullet number 4, this is an important area of your job. And you're doing great on the first 3 items, but you're really not focusing on this one. And that conversation is so much easier because it's very clear to everyone involved that that was part of the understanding. I always like to build in flexibility in job descriptions because let's be honest, everything changes and evolves. Your business is going to change and evolve. The person is going to change and evolve. And that's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. And there's no reason why, if you're 6 months in or 12 months in or 2 years in, it should be a living, breathing document where every once in a while you might need to go back and retool it. And maybe they're doing a lot more and they're succeeding and they've taken on more responsibility, or the business has changed. That's when you want to go back and update it again to make sure that you're all on the same page. Any questions so far? Okay. So we talked about different in-person and online networks and tools. This is another great opportunity to reach into your network. If you've really thought about what am I doing? Where am I going? What do I need? Oh, look, I took 25 minutes and I wrote a job description. I know what I'm looking for. It makes it so much easier to reach out into your network and say, hey, I'm looking for this type of person. I think that hiring from an acquaintance or a friend of a friend or someone who has a referral in the industry is so valuable. I mentioned earlier, I don't know, in one of the talks about hiring slow and kicking the tires, not in a disrespectful way, but in a very respectful way. If it's going to be someone who's going to be working on the ranch or helping us with events, I might say, if I've sort of done the initial vetting, I might say, hey, we have an event this weekend. Can you come work for the day? I'll just pay you for the day. You can see if you'll like it. You might not like it. It might not be the right fit for you. If it's more of a, an office job, think of a project, think of an example, like, oh, this is the type of project that I might want them to do, and give them a hypothetical or give them something and say, I'm going to give you a project. I'm going to pay you for your time and I'll see what you come up with. Watching for red flags. I am a very firm believer in going with your gut. I think that we're all pretty good at that, at really hearing and feeling things that like our brain might not even really be registering. I know like in the olden days, it was like faux pas for people to have like big gaps on their resume or, you know, lots of different jobs. And I think that's really changed now. I think it's a different environment, but I have no problem with big gaps on a resume, but I want a story. Like I want to know it's not bad to take time off. I think it's amazing to take time off, but like, let's talk about it. Did you have, 7 jobs in 3 years? Like, why is that? Like, that's a little red flag, right? If you're bouncing around and you can't hold a job for me more than 3 or 4 months or 7 months, like, I want to know why. And I think they might not tell you the real reason, but I feel like you would have a pretty good idea if there's, if you're getting the real reason or if you're not. Does that make sense? I wish I was joking, but I'm not. A red flag for me is like if their mom calls or emails. um, Someone on our team that was helping me with the slides saw that in my notes and she thought I was joking, like making a joke. I'm like, oh no, this is real. Do we have parents calling and sending emails saying, oh, my child would love to have a summer internship with you, or oh, my child is really interested in agriculture? Okay, that's real. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, delete. I could not hit delete on that email any faster. The last person I want working for me is someone whose mom is getting involved. But it's all the typical things that you would think of. How's their presentation? I don't mean like, are they dressed in a beautiful outfit? I mean, are they presenting the way that you want to represent your brand? And it doesn't mean like, oh, did they iron their jeans? Like, I don't care about that at all. But it's like, who are they? Who is this person? Everyone that works for you is going to represent you and your company and your brand. Reference checks, I think, is not a step to be missed. I want personal and professional references from everyone. And if they're an adult and they've had some sort of a career path or a work history, if they can't come up with a reference for the last 3 years, like, to me, that's an immediate no way. And when I talk to people, when I'm doing reference checks, of course, they're giving you your time, right? So I want to be very respectful, very flexible, very thankful. But I like to ask open-ended questions of, not just when did they work for you? What was their job? Things like that. But really give the person an opportunity to talk if they want to. They don't always. I like to tell them a little bit about my company and what the job is. And I like to say at the end something like, given what you know about this role in our company, is there anything else that you think would be helpful for me to make this decision? And like 9 times out of 10, the person that I'm talking to goes, oh, wow, that's a good question. And then they share something with me really personal. Usually it's good. Like, usually it's like, oh, wow. Like, when you ask the question that way, like, yeah, this person was like, whatever, and really shares something about what a lovely human being they are, or how honest or hardworking. And of course, sometimes it's not positive. Sometimes they get nervous and they kind of, stutter and they maybe don't want to say unkind things, but it becomes very clear that it's not a positive referral. Does that make sense? When you hire them and they accept the job, again, that should be in writing. I'm sorry to say. It doesn't have to be long and involved and detail oriented, but quick little letter, quick little 1-page piece of paper. This is your job. You already have the job description that you signed. This is how much your pay is. These are the terms of your employment. And then when they start, you do not want them to start until you have a plan. And I know this is tricky, right? Especially if you haven't done it before, but how are they going to learn? How are they going to learn about your organization? How are they going to learn about what you need them to do? And what are they going to need from you or other people to make that happen? I mentioned, yes. Um, I would say it really depends on the role, but to me, onboarding means making sure you have the job description, making sure you have some sort of a letter or a piece of paper that has the agreement of what the job is that they're doing, making sure you have all your ducks in a row legally, you know, that you're secure in the decision that you're making, and getting them the very initial training of what they need to do. So if they're going to work at the farmers market, then they need to spend a couple days with our farmers market manager, you know, shadowing them and just learning like, oh, this is where we go to the warehouse, you know, this is how we drive the van, this is how we pack the product, it's not haphazard of what product we bring, it's very meticulous and, you know, thought out of what product we bring to each farmers market. This is how you set up the booth, this is how you talk to a customer, there needs to be training about what is the customer going to ask, how do they communicate, what do they need to know about Stemple Creek Ranch and our meat and our products in order to answer questions and be more than just a warm body standing at the farmer's market selling meat. Because if someone comes and they say, oh, can I have a hanger steak? And you're out of hanger steak, they cannot just say, oh no, sorry, we're out of hanger steak. They need to say, oh, we don't have any more hanger steak today, but we have these 3 other things that I think would meet your goals or, you know, work in your same recipe or in your same meal. And there's no way that people are going to know that and have those skills unless you teach it to them in the onboarding process. For every new hire, again, early and often communication. So every day, every week, every month, you're going to sit down, you're going to talk about it. You're going to say, let's grab a cup of coffee. How are you feeling? What do you need from me? Are you having any struggles with the team, you know, that I should know about? Is there anything unexpected happening? But then I always do a formal 90-day review. So after 90 days, the employee does a self-evaluation. And in their self-evaluation, you know, there's questions like, how's your onboarding been? What did you learn? Have you had any struggles that you weren't expecting? How am I communicating with you? How am I doing at bringing you onto our company? You know, what do you think you need the most help on? It's as much an evaluation of us as it is of them. And then I always like to do peer reviews where the peers that the person works with is also answering questions. And then, of course, there's like a management down evaluation where it's like, you know, what do they need to focus on? What are their core strengths? Things like that. This is another opportunity for AI to help you. You do not have to recreate the wheel. There's like 8,000 versions of these tools online, and you don't have to make your own. You could just use someone else's and edit it if you want. It doesn't have to be a big fancy thing. It could just be in a Word document or like a Google Sheet or something like that. Any questions about that? So the regular check-ins and the very open and honest and diplomatic communication is where you're creating an environment of safety where people feel that they can be honest with you and they understand that you really mean it when you're saying, how are we doing? Like, how's this job for you? Like, is there anything that I can help you work through? Is there anything that I can do different that's going to make this a better experience for both you and the company? I've absolutely had employees that were really struggling, and I mean, many. And I am like a helper by nature, and I'm always inclined to really want to try and help the person succeed. I wouldn't have hired them if I didn't. And so, you know, we've had people where, you know, I've met with them formally weekly or monthly and wrote it down and been like, this is a performance improvement plan. This is what you're struggling with. This is how we as an organization are helping you be better. And I have absolutely had people succeed through it and learn and really refocus and go on to be really great team members. And I've definitely had people not be able to do it, even though I thought they could, which means I was wrong, and that's okay. But by the time you get to the conversation where you're letting them go, they are not surprised and they are not angry because they saw that I really, truly, patiently, and caringly tried to help them. Does that make sense? I mean, we have some employees that we let go and they are still in our support network. You know, they come to our events, they'll reach out and be like, hey, I saw you're doing this, that, and the other thing, and I'm so excited for you. They're still friends with us. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. All it means is that it was not the right person at the right time in the right place. I think that one of our greatest accomplishments is not having bad blood with former employees. One thing on that with a small organization is that sometimes employees are growing in who they are, and you don't have a spot for them to grow into, even though they deserve it or they want it. And so with people like that, people that I see that really they want to climb the ladder, they want to do more, they want to learn. Like, I'm very honest with them. Like, I'm going to help you do that. And if you need to leave our organization to continue on your path of growth and achievement, I will help you with that. You know, we will be a reference. We will help you network. We will help you brainstorm of what is the next best stop for your own career. I mean, it's equally as important to have people like that than it is to have people that really don't have growth, you know, hopes for growth and, you know, climbing the ladder, so to speak. Every organization needs them, and that's okay. It's just like you have to know who's who. You have to know who's going to be perfectly happy in the same job for 20 years with a smile on their face, doing a great job, and who is going to want to do something more and different and, you know, a little bit better in the second or third year.
Lisa, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Just related to that. Sorry, over here. Mm-hmm. And you may have just answered this, but I'd love to hear you speak to it a little bit more. In that trying to make sure that folks are leaving without bad blood, that in taking in feedback, employees could feel like it's very personal, like they could feel like there's a failing in them. And I'm curious how you manage that, and so that they are being sent off or they are being let go, not because of a personal thing.
You can't control how people feel. You just can't. And is it perfect every time? And is it only sunshine and rainbows? No, it's not. But I do think if you're open and vulnerable and honest and diplomatic, that I think most people can process through that in a healthy way. When you do have folks on your team, knowing what you now know about how we run our organization, you're not going to be surprised to hear me say each employee needs to have goals, and their goals need to align with the plan of your company and where you see yourself going. And in the strategic one pager that I mentioned, where it says these are the things that our company is most working on this year, every employee, should know where their job and their role fits into that, so that they see that their success and the company's success are tied together. And goals are tricky because sometimes things change. So again, you have to be ready and willing to make changes. You know, it could be that you get 6 months into the year and suddenly the goal's not working for a reason, or, you know, you can just be flexible. And for me, by far, the hardest part is that goals need to be measurable, which is so hard. I feel like my brain still hurts when I have to think of ways to measure a goal. Because if you just say that the goal is that you're really friendly and professional when you're selling at the farmer's market, like, there's no way to measure that. But if you don't have a way to measure the goal, then you don't have a way to know if the person succeeded in reaching the goal or not. Sure. So, like a customer service goal would be that every single email and phone call is returned within 24 business hours. It's very measurable. So, like, you know, if I see in our main customer service email that there's an email from Tuesday, and it's now Thursday and it hasn't been responded to, that does not meet the goal. We already talked really about all of these things. If you feel like you have someone on your team that is going to be angry and want to hurt you and hurt your company and like, whatever that might mean, you really want to do your homework ahead of time and get some legal advice about how to handle that. That is not when you want to do self-surgery. And, this is where putting in the work ahead of time of the culture and how you treat your employees and how you communicate with them, a huge part of the reasoning for that is to avoid situations like, an employee, either quitting or getting fired, and then they, give you bad Google reviews, or they report you to a governmental agency for things that you're not even doing, or they talk bad about you in your industry. Like, I mean, people do crazy things, and you want to position yourself so that you are not vulnerable to that as much as possible. Just an observation here. The cost of keeping the wrong person on your team is a lot higher than the discomfort of letting them go, as hard as it is. And I have had to let a lot of people go in, over the last 20 years. It's never easy. It's never fun. I always, every single time, get a stomach ache because I'm like literally sick over it. And it doesn't matter if really they weren't even that good of an employee, it still makes me physically ill. And what I always try and remind myself is that if it didn't make me upset, and if it didn't make me ill, and if I didn't get really nervous, like, I would not be a good person. I would not be a kind-hearted person. I would be like a psychopath. And so it doesn't mean it's not hard. It just means you still need to do it. I think I've already talked about most of these items. Lauren and I really try and walk the walk and talk the talk. Like, are we workaholics and do we absolutely work our tails off? Yes. But we take time off and we take vacations and we screw around. And there's plenty of, Wednesdays that Lauren's fishing or hunting or doing nothing, resting and relaxing. And, several years ago, our family, we took a 5-week road trip in the summer. And did we stay in touch and Zoom into meetings and like keep up with our team over the phone? Yes. But guess what? We took a 5-week trip and the world kept going. Everything kept moving. There was not a catastrophic event. Yeah, thank you. I'm skipping a few slides here. I'm almost at the end. So this is Oscar, who's our main livestock manager. One thing that I want to mention is that delegating is really hard. It's hard to do it well because it takes a lot of trust. And good delegating doesn't happen haphazardly. It happens because you've put in the work to have someone in the other position that you trust and that you've clearly communicated with what you need and what you want for them to do it the right way. You do have to let go of control. Things are going to go wrong. They will make mistakes. You will beat your head against the wall a little bit of, oh my God, if I was there, I could have fixed that. But it's just part of growing, and it's part of the process. And a lot of times they will come up with a solution that is better than what you would have come up with, or they can look at it with fresh eyes, or they might have their own skills or resources that you would not have had in the first place. And although all of this is really hard and not the most fun part of running a business, it's truly an investment in your future. It will deepen and expand the legacy that you're able to leave. And it will truly give you the time and the space to either do more of the work that you truly enjoy and that you're really best at, or not, to not do the work and to let someone else do it. And that is all. Do we have any questions in the last couple of minutes? Yes. Yeah, you're like, wait, that's not the way it's supposed to work. Love it. Yes.
This might be a little in the weeds, but and I know with maybe your background, this came maybe a little more naturally, but I know you had said around like the HR and like the legal advice to kind of like have a good plan and have that prepared. Who did you find most valuable as a resource in doing that work? Was it like a CPA? Was it a lawyer?
Great question. Not a CPA. A CPA is great for preparing your taxes and giving you tax advice. Who you want, and I'm a little bit speaking out of turn because I'm from California and every state's different, but I am a little bit biased against HR consultants. But I think they have a place and a value. I would go to an employment law attorney, someone who specifically does advice and counseling for small businesses. It's a specialty area, just like any other area of law. And you want someone who that is truly what they do every day. And you can tell them about your business and you can say, look, I'm not, Apple. Like, I don't need a 150-page employee handbook. Like, I just need some really kind of simple, basic introductory things. And they should be able to hear you and listen to you and help you with your basic tools. Once you're set up with that, I do think an HR consultant is helpful in helping you with things like job descriptions, interviewing, counseling employees that you're struggling with, making decisions on the fly about people. I also think just if you can meet someone or you have someone in your network who just has a lot of experience in business operations, that can be really helpful too.
So I wondered if you guys use NDAs and for what?
Yes.
For okay.
Yep. We use NDAs. Every employee signs an NDA. I think because we felt like we were, oh my God, how do I say this without sounding so obnoxious? We felt like we were figuring out problems that other people were not able to figure out in our business. And we really did not want to teach our employees all of that and then have them leave and go to another company and use all of our very hard fought lessons and tools. Okay. Every state has different laws about what you can even really protect in terms of confidentiality. But I am a very firm believer in NDAs. And that's an even better reason why you want to make sure when you have employees leave that they're leaving on good terms. Sometimes you can't control it, but a lot of times you can.
Sorry. So as a follow-up, do you have any difficulty like initiating that with employees? Does anybody go, okay, what is
Nope.
this?
I think it's almost like when you're like saying something to a toddler. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but it's like, just be clear, honest, concise, and matter of fact. Like, that's it. This is not weird. This is just what we do. Every single person that we hire, they get a job description, they get an employee handbook, they have to sign an NDA, they have to sign something that says you are an at-will employee. This is not a contract of employment. It's just part of the package. And I have never, not one time in 20 years, had an employee balk at that.
Lisa, thank you very much.
Thank you.